Welcome back, folks. My name's Shane. If you watched my new camera day video recently, you know that I purchased a third Lumix S9. That's right, I'm a desperado. But I actually got to use these in a multi-camera setup along with my S5 Mark IIX recently. So we had a 4-camera multi-camera rig set up, and I wanted to talk about my setup and how I use these without any overheating or any issues whatsoever. So there's a few things I wanted to talk about. One, the image quality and value for money out of these 3 cameras are every bit as good in the regular frame rates as anything that I've had 3 times the price in the past. I've owned an A7S III, an FX3, an FX30, the S5 Mark IIX, all those kind of cameras. And for the value for money proposition that these offer, I think they're almost unmatched, but they're not perfect. So I had to work around a few little things, and I was well aware of those things ahead of putting this multi-camera setup together. Now you might be asking, why on earth would I be using Lumix S9s in a multi-camera setup? One, the image quality, obviously, as I mentioned already, is fantastic. I love the physical form factor of these. They're really small. Now, I explained a bit of this on my prior video, so if you want to skip ahead, you can. I'll timestamp this video down below. But essentially, you can fit 2 of these side by side for every S5 Mark II, so they're very small and portable, which is exactly what I wanted. Now, these weren't running non-stop in the guitar shop where I used these. They were running for 15-20 minutes at a time. I would hit pause, I would hit record, I would hit pause, I would hit record. No warning messages, no overheating, no nothing. They just simply worked. And shooting 4K at 25 or 30p, you can essentially let these run all day, and I'll share some tips on how I ended up doing all of that. Now, I ran plenty of tests before putting this setup together, and this is like the ultimate run and gun travel rig. A few years back, I toured around the coast of Florida with Rhiannon, and we shot a whole bunch of content in guitar shops all around the coast. It was an awesome trip, and I shot with the A7S III and Sony FX3, and these kind of put my mind at ease without really compromising in terms of image quality. I mean, the in-body image stabilization in these cameras is much better. So yeah, this is going to be not only a great A and B camera for guitar shop videos, much like that, but they're smaller and lighter, less expensive. I don't have to stress about them as much, and the end result is going to be every bit as good. So I'm going to be using these in a handheld run and gun capacity coming up, but I've also just used them in their first multi-camera setup, which is the point of this video. Now, I mentioned that I don't buy gear just to have it sit around. I buy gear to use it for a particular purpose, and then I finish that project, and at the end, I've got my end result. So I'm going to share the whole setup process with you, and then I'm going to talk about the end result as well, which was a really great thing to have at the end of the day, because that's what it's all about. Now, for this particular shoot, I actually had 3 S9s and an S5 Mark IIX as the primary multi-camera setup. Then in the background, I was running the GH7 with the Yongnuo 17mm f1.7 autofocus lens that I recently reviewed as the B-roll camera, and then I had the G9 Mark II and the 9mm f1.7 as our vlogging camera. That way I could keep everything on tripods and then use cameras for particular jobs. And the end result is some of the best produced stuff I've done with a hands-off experience. I'm going to talk about how I set these cameras up as well. That's important. But yeah, the end result out of this project really looked awesome. It had a great sort of vloggy feel to it when I was using the Micro Four Thirds camera, but it also allowed me to get maybe the most professional looking multi-camera setup I've had in this particular scenario. And I've shot with the Sony cameras in this exact room. I've shot with the GH5S cameras, which I still think are fantastic. Man, those cameras are good. But it really made it easy because the autofocus is so good in every mode on these cameras. It just took care of itself. There were only a couple of times where I made a mistake on one of the angles, but I was easily able to get around that. And we might talk about that a little bit later too. But essentially the end result looked beautiful. And I think it's really important anytime you're thinking about putting cameras in a multi-camera setup to get the same camera. The reason why I wanted 3 of these is because one, if I ever use 4, the color science matches perfectly. It's the same sensor as the S5 Mark IIX, but it also allows me to copy settings between each camera. So I was using my own custom real-time LUT, which is the tweaked natural picture profile that I use. I call it Natural Plus. And everything that you see is straight out of camera. I've done nothing to this in post-production, which is pretty wild. So I was able to get matching results using these 3 cameras and the S5 Mark IIX and I didn't have to do any sort of color tweaking in post, which is always a bonus. So in terms of setup, I was using autofocus with these. They were all set to a one area box mode with human detection. And I thought that would be the most reliable in case, someone else entered the frame. It would ensure that anyone in that box was actually the target, and it worked a treat. So no problems there whatsoever. Now, the one problem I did have is I accidentally knocked the box on one of the cameras, and I did notice it was finding the person behind the target. So yeah, I've got to sort of tweak that coming up. But overall, the autofocus worked like 95% of the night. It was only my own stupidity that actually kind of stuffed that up. Now, when it comes to lenses, all the lenses are part of the same series. So I was using the 18mm f1.8 Lumix lens on the drummer, who's Drew. It looked awesome. It was a different angle than what I would normally go for, but we tried to find something that he really liked, mixed with something that kind of worked and could showcase some of his chops on the drums. So that was great. Now, the camera at the front was rocking the 24mm f1.8 prime lens from Lumix as well, the S Series 1 also. And I kind of wish in hindsight I had taken the kit lens. I needed something just a little bit wider than 24mm, so I should have taken the 20 to 60mm, and it was my own mistake not bringing it with me, but it was, you learn these lessons. It was just a little bit too narrow, but we managed to get away with it. So that was actually the lens I was using on the S5 Mark IIX. For both myself and Ben, who was on electric guitar, we were rocking the 50mm f1.8s. Now, these are my favorite primes from the series, just in terms of the way they look. They do something beautiful to the background. It really looks beautiful. I had a friend of mine say, man, is that a green screen? Like, what's going on there? I'm like, no, that's the shop. He goes, no way, that looks like that. I said, yeah, it's the lens. The lens really gives you that beautiful subject separation and all that kind of stuff. So it's worth also talking about why the primes were the way to go. Now, some might say you don't need that much background blur in the shot. I would almost agree, but the beauty of the full frame gear is we had minimal lighting. So we had overhead lights on, and I had a couple of small lights with me just lighting up the scene. The first of the two lights that we had lighting up the room was this one right here, this little guy. This is a 60-watt light from the folks at Jun with the mini softbox attached, and it was plenty bright and it was great. This little softbox is awesome. It means you're still getting a nice soft light, but it's plenty bright lighting up from the front, and it was enough to fill the room, which was great. And the second one was this little guy right here from Small Rig. This is the RC60C, and I use this little rubber thing in the reflector here just to help diffuse the light a little bit because it's just too bright otherwise. And that was all we used, and we had them diagonally facing in, and that's it. The rest of the lights were just part of the shop. Now, I had all the cameras set to auto white balance, which is something that I don't often do. But again, the advantage to having matching sensors, matching cameras, all that kind of stuff is the cameras did exactly the same white balance in the room automatically, and everything matched. It had the same lenses, the same sensor, the same camera. It's going to look the same. So that was awesome. It just did a fantastic job at giving me exact results on each camera. It took a moment after I hit record for it to white balance, but once it did, it was done, and that was awesome. So it sort of took the stress out of which light do you balance for. And I tried a few manual settings, and then I just went, I'm just gonna set this to auto white balance and hope for the best. And in combination with these two lights, that's it. That's all we had. I can't believe how bright these are for such small lights. So if you want to check my reviews of these, I'll link them down in the description. Now let's talk about how I set the cameras up in terms of recording quality. Now, one of the things I like to do, and I'm doing it right now, I like to shoot in the MP4 codec on a lot of these cameras, shooting 420 10-bit at 72 megabytes per second. The reason is I can get so much more filmed on an SD card than I could if I was shooting with some of the MOV codecs that use a higher data rate. So for me, it works fine. I shoot every one of my talk to camera headshots in here shooting 420 10-bit. It's faster for me to transfer the files to my computer. It's easy to edit. It looks great, and I can't see a difference between 420 10-bit and 422 10-bit, but you can shoot with 422 10-bit if you want on these. It doesn't really matter, but being that I've got 4 cameras set up and 2 other cameras, I wanted to keep the file size under a terabyte, which is my SSD editing space, and it was well under that at the end of the night. So yeah, the MP4 codec shooting 420 10-bit 4K at 25 frames per second worked beautifully, and it looked awesome. So that's how I had them all set up. Maybe the biggest reason I ended up going for another S9 was I ran a whole bunch of tests with these cameras in the studio shooting with dummy batteries, which was how most of them were hooked up. So I had these two, the blue and the black one, hooked up over dummy battery, and I had my S5 Mark IIX with a dummy battery as well. And this S9, my new one, was on battery. I never once saw any overheating warning message or anything, and I was letting them run for, again, up to about 20 minutes at a time before I'd hit pause, record, pause, record. Now, interestingly enough, I ran a whole lot of studio tests with the S9 with my dummy battery setup, and I was even able to record open gate until basically the card filled up. I stopped at 10 minutes early because I was just getting sick of doing these overheating tests here at the house. I knew the real test was running it for 20 minutes, stopping it, running it for 20 minutes, stopping it, running it for 30 minutes, stopping it. So I did all of those tests as well, and I was unable to get any of the cameras to overheat here in the studio, and I thought, these are going to work great anytime I'm at the shop or doing a similar thing with a multi-camera setup indoors somewhere else. So yeah, not only did the cameras on the dummy battery work indefinitely, but I was also able to get the one on the battery to last the entire night on one battery, which is the other reason why I love these cameras. And it did great. And that was the one that was on Drew on drums. So yeah, it worked without incident whatsoever, which is a huge bonus. Not only did I have to worry about my multi-camera setup, I was also doing all of the audio. So thanks to Drew for helping out with the mic placement and all that kind of stuff. But I used to be an audio guy. I've produced a lot of albums for local artists and also artists overseas as well. So I've been around, the production side of music for a long time. I don't do much of it anymore unless it's this kind of particular project. And yeah, so I had like 6 or 7 different inputs into my sound card. I then had to mix that on my computer, render those audio files out, sync them up with the video files, and do all the editing. Usually we would have someone doing some switching here, but for the kind of stuff I'm doing with these are going to be used in a situation where no one's on a switcher and I don't have to worry about full-size HDMIs or dongles or anything like that. I can just hit record and let them run. So for the project at hand, these were the perfect option. Now, while there's a USB-C port on the side of the camera here for power, I don't usually recommend that. I would either say use the battery if you just got it set up in the studio, or get a dummy battery and it will extend your recording time by a lot. And again, I was able to record basically open gate until the card filled up. Interestingly enough, while I didn't see any warning messages or anything, after about an hour or so of recording open gate, I hit pause, or the record button again to pause the recording or to stop the recording. And I noticed then the overheating warning came up. It came up after the fact. So yeah, it does get quite hot. I was checking the temperature on the camera and all that kind of stuff with a little thermometer thing that I've got. And yeah, it was still within the threshold and it didn't shut down even after letting it run for a long time. So the dummy battery way is definitely the move if you're going to be using it in a studio situation. Just know if you are running power into it and HDMI out of it and all that kind of stuff, it's going to create more heat, which means you're probably better off getting an S5 Mark II or X. But for a portable multi-camera rig, this is going to be so good. This is maybe my favorite small multi-camera rig of all time. I've shot Micro Four Thirds in a multi-camera setup. I've shot with Sony cameras in a multi-camera setup. And for the outside of the studio stuff where I'm going to be set up somewhere else, or if I'm doing a run and gun guitar shop walkthrough video, a pair of these are going to give me such great results thanks to the in-body image stabilization, low light performance, and just overall image quality. And I love the fact I can customize these cameras with my own picture profile and get the look that I want without having to do anything in post-production. For me, that's huge. I don't believe in shooting vlog all the time just because, and then you're going to spend the time grading it. A lot of people, especially on YouTube who shoot with vlog, don't add enough contrast or brightness to their image, and it always looks desaturated all of the time, unless that's the creative look you're going for. But I just don't find that appealing for YouTube. I always just like to shoot in picture profiles that look good, that save me time in post-production. Some could argue it doesn't look good, and that's totally fine too. But yeah, these have been absolutely perfect for my use case. And yeah, I'm just wrapped that I was able to get a third one of these for this particular task. And the whole idea of getting this set up is to use it. So this will be my run and gun multi-camera setup moving forward. I'm actually shooting a documentary this weekend as of producing this video, And I'll probably take one or two of these alongside the S5 Mark IIX or GH7. I think they'll be really complementary in terms of their scenarios that they'll be used in. So this will be a bit of a low light shoot mixed with a lot of music. And I don't want to take anything too huge, nothing too professional looking. You know, they're going to be in a room full of people, and the stuff that looks the least intimidating is the best. And these, you know, having a little blue camera like this isn't as intimidating for a lot of people. There'll be some interviews shot and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be the first project. The second project will be another hopeful trip away where I'll be using at least 2, potentially 3 of these in a similar setup to what you've just seen in this video. So I'm working on that right now. But yeah, I'm wrapped with what I was able to get out of these. I'm working within their limitations. I know they're not perfect cameras by any stretch of the imagination for some people, especially if you need an EVF, but I don't need an EVF. And for me, these just work. So yeah, again, they really tick the box for me personally. And that's what it's all about. You got to find the stuff that works for your particular use case. Now, if you have any questions about any of the stuff I've spoken about in this video, just let us know. I'm always check in the comment section, all that kind of stuff. So thank you for all the support. For those who watched my last podcast video, sorry about my vibe in that video. I was just getting over a cold. I was feeling a bit sort of groggy in the head, as we call it here, just a bit sort of tired and lethargic, but I'm much better now. So yeah, I'm back to normal. So thanks again for watching. My name's Shane. I will catch you on the next one. Catch you soon. See ya.